Marco, can you kind of help us with like what is a snow load? And break that apart into like ground load, roof load. Can you kind of explain what those things are?
Yeah, for sure. So all different regions across Canada will have varying snow loads, which is just essentially that as snow falls, it'll accumulate over time. And so you'll have your ground snow load and then your roof snow load. Your ground snow load is just as snow accumulates on the ground, right? You have a generally uniformly distributed snow accumulation across your ground. But then when you come to the roof, you have a pitch most likely on your roof. And so we'll have certain factors to help take those things into account, such as the steeper the pitch, the less snow will stay on there. And then so we take that into account. The the inverse as well. If you have a flat roof, then that would mean more snow accumulation and it would be pretty close to your ground snow load. Then if you have a slippery roof, so like steel cladding onto your roof or shingles would hold on to that snow much better. So we'd have to take that into account that although you have a steep pitch, your shingles would be maintaining more of that snow on there than if you had a steel roof. Then we take into account as well whether you have a lot of trees or buildings around you or if you're in an open area, because your wind would then come in play in effect and either help brush a lot of that snow off, or if you're in a dense forest, then you really don't have much of a wind effect and then all that snow can just freely accumulate with only the pitch really making an impact on that. So that's your main difference between your ground snow load, your roof snow load, and then depending on where you are, like for example, here in Kitchener, we have a relatively low snow load, but then if you go to places like Whistler, the snow becomes almost magnified by 9 times. So getting an idea of where those things are is important, which is why usually if you come to us, we'll ask for a specific address so we can see what kind of snow load we're working with. And these snow loads are grabbed from the National Building Code or a local building code, depending on what the regulations are required for your particular municipality and province or out of province.
Yeah, or state in this case.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I think that is more tricky for everyone to understand is like, we'll commonly just get the question like, what's the rating? And that I'm like, well, it's a little bit hard for me to tell you because there's so many factors at play, in any region. And it varies wildly from like Northern Ontario to the East Coast to the West Coast down to California over to Florida. Like there's going to be a huge range. And that all of those different factors play in together. So, things like you got a roof load number, but are you using shingles? Are you using metal? What's the pitch of the roof? What's the wind? All of those things can kind of factor in. So it's not quite as easy as just being like, here's a number. How does that compare to, what's listed online? Do most municipalities that you've dealt with, do they kind of have um, a layman's terms or any guidance for their residents if they're like, okay, like on your website, it says it's 50 pounds per square foot for the rating. Do they further take into account things like the roof pitch, the metal roof, all of that? Or do they kind of just look at it and go, well, here's a number?
Yeah, usually it's rare, I think, that municipalities will actually have a snow load that they just have on their website. They'll have something they can give you if you get in touch with them personally. They would refer to the National Building Code, which is just a tabulated form of various snow loads across the country. But if you did reach out to them and they gave you a value, that is going to almost always be the ground snow load. So we work with the ground snow load, and from there we get our roof snow load with all these other factors that I mentioned. But it's always going to be the ground snow load that they give you.
Right. So, we should probably clarify, like, and I see, emails coming with like, oh, this is my snow load. And I was like, wow, that's, how did they know that if you didn't tell them anything about your roof or anything? So roof loads, correct me if I'm wrong, are generally a percentage of the ground load. They're like the ground load number is usually not the same as your roof load number. Fair?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that can kind of be confusing for anyone who hasn't kind of been through this type of thing before because, they'll go on their town website or they'll go online and Google, like, what's my snow load for this area? And then they see a number and they're like, perfect, I need that number. And they don't quite realize, like, that's probably a ground load rating, number one. And you need to, we need to do some further research to figure out um, what the actual roof load is for your area. And so sometimes they may be able to get that talking to their municipality or an engineering firm like you guys. So that I would say is probably the number one question. So ground load, roof load, two different numbers for sure. Takes a little bit of research to figure out what, it is for your actual area. But it's not impossible to do. It's not rocket science to get it done and make sure it's going to work for your area. Fair?
Right. Yeah.